Hi, everyone, and welcome to the third session of our online SILS 4. And today we're going to talk about a theme that is connecting almost everything we've been talking about from Thursday onwards. But before we go to the session, I just wanted to welcome you all. And also I wanted to say, if you haven't already, please do go check out this short films showcase on our Hubilo platform. It should be a tab. And you should really go check out these short films. They've been curated by us, but also among the short films, Rita Banerjee, well-known filmmaker, and Prerna Bindra, great author and friend of wildlife, both of them have curated their top 5 films as well. So go check out their top 5, create your own top 5s, but watch the films, they're really great. And also we've noticed that a bunch of you are already using the platform. Please do continue to do so during the session, and also before and after. We'll have it on for the rest of the day. You can set up meetings, you can network in the networking lounge. And I'm sure by now you know that the event feed is where you can go and share your thoughts, have a discussion, flag things that you want to from the sessions. And also you can message people on Hubilo itself. You know, you've already been doing that as well. With that, I'd like to call Naveen on and we'll get into this session. We have great speakers today and great topics that really tie into how collaborative approaches and what the collaborations on the ground are doing in Central India and what might be the future with things like the National Mission for Biodiversity and Human Wellbeing. And also, a big shout out to Pinky, who's been working on our data collab, and she'll tell us more about that as well. So Naveen, if you'd like to come on to video.
Hi, good evening, everyone. And good morning, my friends on the other corner of the globe. It's a pleasure to be moderator for the third and final session of CILSS. NCCI began as a place for sharing. And at the last CILS in Melghat, we discussed a data platform to share and make data available for collaborations. Since Melghat, we have seen collaborations and data platforms blossom. And to this end, we bring the data dashboard, a detailed view of which will be given by John Mandel. And we also shine a light on collaborative efforts that can aid and inform our work. Today, we have an elite group of speakers. So we will listen to Dr. Uma, from NCBS, Dr. Prachi from Coalition for Corridors, and we have Dr. Claudio and Mr. Kishore Rite from SLTP. Claudio is at Wild Crew, University of Oxford and Born Free Foundation, and Kishore Rite from Satpura Foundation. So we will listen to them as well. I will hand over to Dr. Pinky to start her presentation on the data dashboard, please.
Can you all see my screen?
Yes, that's good.
Okay, great. Thank you so much, Amrita and Naveen. It's a pleasure to be here today. Thanks all for joining us on this third and final day of SILS 4. How we wish that we were somewhere remote and serene and beautiful, but you know, we adapt, and I'm grateful to be here today to be updating you on this data hub that we started a while ago. So without further ado, let me take you to what I call how it started. So if you are on social media, you'd see probably a trend that says how it started, how it's going. So I thought it would be nice to start as how it started. As you would see, if you remember, it started pretty small group. A handful of people thought that it would be really nice to have a collaboration, a collaborative effort tying all the different components that we are working on in Central India, and that came from the love of this landscape. And we brainstormed about something, a symposium, a networking group, and then we came up with the first Kanha Pinch Landscape Symposium, KPLS, as we used to call it back then. And that happened in 2014. And it grew. I mean, how it grew after that. In 2016, we came up with our Central Indian Landscape Symposium, or SILS, and you can see it just grew organically. And that's when we started interacting with more and more students. And when we were there, I personally got to talk to many students and community workers who were telling me that, you know, there are so much data out there and it would be really nice to have a central platform. As you know, that, you know, many funding agencies these days require us to share our data openly on open access platform. But there are so much data out there. It's sometimes you can feel overwhelmed if you do not know where to go for it. So that's where it started back in 2016. And I started kind of thinking about it. Back then, I was at Columbia University working for a data center, a NASA data center. So I was involved in this process. I was working with different scientific teams to kind of curate their data, develop new data, and then disseminate it on, you know, open access platform. And that's when I kind of started thinking about how we can do something similar, but maybe much simpler for SILs. So if you remember last time when we met together, you know, in person at Mailghat in 2019, I distributed paper forms and I chased around you to kind of fill that up and bring it back to me. Basically, I was trying to gather some information that how to best serve this community, what you are looking for, what are the different characteristics you are looking for in this data platform. So just to sum it up, I'm not going to give you details on each and every questions that we asked. There are many, but there was one point where we asked science and policy can be improved with a dedicated web space, such as a data hub or a data dashboard, as we are calling it, hosting data relevant to SILs, particularly for SILs. And over 82% of you strongly agreed with it or agreed with it. This was based on an anonymous survey of 50 people, so I got 50 responses. The other question that I asked was, if you have a freely accessible data dashboard, what, would you be willing to share your data or readily access the data? And over 90% of responses said yes. Very empathetic yes. When we looked at the distribution of those responses, we saw there were 49% responses were from people in academia, 12% were from government agencies, NGOs were 24%, and there are some folks who identified as other, like non-academia, non-government, or non-NGO. So it was clear that there was a clear a requirement or a wish almost for an open data dashboard. So I started working on it, and thankfully, I'm very happy today to launch this data dashboard. Now, when we're designing it, the main theme was simplicity and ease of access. As many of you know, when you go out on a NASA data dashboard or any other data dashboard, there are so many different things. Sometimes it's difficult to find the right kind of data. Now, our goal with this data dashboard was this should be your one-stop shop. So you go there, you know what is available, what is not, how to get to the author, very simple layout, nothing fancy. So that's what you will see. So here is the first landing page that you will see. Now, what I would request all of you not to go to the website right now. Just stay with me for next few minutes as I kind of show you how to go to different pages, and then definitely go there. Feel free to give it a look and let us know how it works or if it's working for you. So the link to the data dashboard is at the bottom of my screen. So that's where you have to go. When you first go there, this is what you see. This is the landing page. As you can see, there's only two tabs, Browse Data and About. So you are already by default on the Browse Data page. And when you are on that page, there are currently there are only three tabs. So there's like all data sets. And we also added, based on the anonymous survey, two categories for now. And hopefully we will grow in near future, land use land cover type of data sets, and then climate data sets, because those were identified as the, the most important ones or most relevant ones for the work that we do at SILS. So if you are there, the first page, the all dataset page, you can go through all the different datasets. So you would have an idea what's available. If you want to narrow down your search, you click on, let's say, on the climate page, and then you will see all the data that have been identified to do something related to climate. So right now there are two data sets. One is an annual rain use efficiency data, and the other is an annual rainfall. And I'll tell you more about the different data types that can be hosted on this website. Now let's go to the land use land cover page. If you click on that tab, you will see two data sets listed right now. One is an India annual winter cropped area, and the other is annual NDVI. Now, this is what you see when you click on this tab on the top, right? Now, next, just click on one of these data set, and this is what you will see. So let's say you clicked or hover your mouse on this data set, on the Indian annual winter cropped area, you'll see these two icons. So you want to click on that link icon. So if you click on the link icon, that will take to that specific data set page. So let's say you did that. This is what you will see if you are going there for the very first time, because we wanted to collect some data on who's using it so that we can improve the data dashboard in the future. Very simple. Again, simplicity is the key here. So very simple form: name, email, country, and institution. You enter these four, you are good to go. So once we collect this data, you will land on this data page. So what you'll see, the layout on the right-hand side, you will see a snapshot of the data, what it would look like when you have downloaded and opened it. Sometimes you'll see that some data dashboards have data, but just a link or an FTP site. And you honestly don't know what the data would look like. I have gone through several experiences when I have downloaded big size of data, only to realize that when I open it, that's not what I want. So for the very beginning, we wanted to give you a snapshot what the data looked like before you download it and put a lot of files, many big size files on your laptop or on your desktop, on your computer. So this is what you'll see. So now you know that what the data look like. On the left-hand side, you'll see a data description. And then at the bottom, you'll see data download links. Now, we have curated it in a way so that you have more options. So you can decide if you want to download data for certain regions or certain years, so that we are not bundling up all 20 years of data. If you need it, fine. It's not that big. It's just you click it and it will be automatically downloaded if you allow it for this website to download on your computer. But we wanted to make sure that people get what they need, and we are not pushing them to download everything, even if they don't require it. So let's take a close-up look what you'll see in this kind of data set. Now, I just wanted to make sure that to tell you that there are two kinds of data sets that we are hosting here right now. One is that kind of data set that are already being distributed elsewhere. So this winter cropped area data set is a perfect example for that. If your data set, your nominated data set is one of that kind of a data, you will see there will be a disclaimer or a note, the very first. That's the first thing you will notice on that data. So as you can see here, this data set is originally distributed by a NASA data center with a link. So, you can go to that link and download data from there. Here, we also are hosting it here. So there's a small kind of very brief data description, and then the recommended citations. I would definitely request all of you, if you are downloading data or using that data, please use these citations. Here you can see that there are two citations. One is for the paper and also for the data. When you share a data on a different platform that gives you a DOI, that's a data DOI. So if you're using this kind of data, you need to use the data DOI, and if there's a paper associated also that. So both citations should be used in your work. And then you go to the data download links. For your convenience, we are also showing you the size of the data that you have. So for example, this 2001 data is 1.91 MB. So you can make an informed decision before downloading that data. Now, this is for the data sets that are already distributed elsewhere and have a DOI. What if you have some data sets that you want to share? And we definitely encourage you to do that. We want that. And that was the whole point of this platform. So we do have example for that too. So this one, this annual rain use efficiency data is from my own work. So I published that paper, but I generated tons of data that I thought, can be used by others. Sometimes you read a paper and you think that, one of these data sets might be very useful for your work, but you don't know how to do or how to reach out to the author. And sometimes the authors might not be that, responsive immediately. So if you know of that kind of data, if you have that kind of data, please reach out to us. So you'd see the only difference here is that we don't have the top note where we are telling you that this has been distributed. Even if it has not, if you just publish the paper, we are happy to share your data with others. So here you'll have a data description. You will also have the recommended citation and any other notes. So for example, these data sets, I have it available for all of India, but because of the data limitations, I am sharing it right now just for the central Indian landscape. So I have it for Maharashtra, Madhya Pradesh, and Chhattisgarh. But if you're working on somewhere else in India, feel free to reach out to me. So here I'm the corresponding author. And if you're sharing that data, then we will just put a note there that if you want data more than that is being distributed here, please feel free to reach out to the corresponding author. Same thing, you have a recommended citation here for the paper, but not for the data because the data is not distributed elsewhere, but there's still a paper link. And then there are data download links. Now, right now, these are the two types of data sets we are distributing here. The reason being is that when you distribute a data, there's a whole metadata process of different things that goes behind it. And right now we cannot really have a very elaborate kind of vetting system in place. So we are hoping to distribute data that are somehow published either through a paper or through a data DOI. So if you have published a paper and would like to share your data that's not published elsewhere, feel free to reach out to us and we'll be happy to share your data for you with the community. Now, how do you do that? So that's where we have the other tab, which is the About tab. Very simple, only two tabs here. So go to the About tab and you will see there's a little bit of description, but I'd like to draw your attention to the bottom section of it where we say, would you like to nominate a data set? Please remember, this is not a data wish list. It's more like a data recommendation or nomination. So what happens when you click on this Google form link? So you can see a blue Google form button there. So click on it and you are here. So on the left, what is required is your email address so that we can reach out to you. And on the right, again, I promise, not more than 4 questions. We are asking you whether you are the author of it. And if you are the author, then we'll probably reach out to you asking questions if we have any. But we have made it really simple. The data currently hosted on this website would give you some ideas what kind of information we need from you. So feel free to follow that guideline when you are sharing your data. We also ask you that if you're the author, is there a published article? And we'd obviously link that citation so that we can put that up on that website. Then if you're the author, please send the data description and the data or the location to our central email system, the conservingcentralindia@gmail.com, after you submit this form. So this form is to give us some idea that what kind of data set we should be ready to get curated for this website. If you're not the author, but if you think that this is something you would be interested in, feel free to give us a link to that copy, the data source, if it's available, and we will make sure to kind of prepare it for this, just the central India part, and then upload it here. And then just to give us a little bit of idea what kind of data there are. Is it a raster data or a vector data or, tabular data? So all data are welcome. So that's pretty much it. We would definitely would like to get your feedback. As we said, right now it's very simple. There are only 4 data sets available there. The reason being is that we really want it to be collaborative. We want your feedback, your input, your contribution. So I know from the last 2 days of presentations, there's tons of data that are waiting to be shared with the community. So if you are comfortable, if you have already published your paper, or if you have shared your data elsewhere, and if you are comfortable with sharing your data on this platform, please reach out to us. There's Twitter feed, there's emails, there's Facebook. Please reach out to us. Please remember to use that Google data nomination form so that we know what kind of data sets are available there. And we would be happy to receive any feedback. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Pinky. It was wonderful to go through the data dashboard, and we have noted down that you have tried to bring the overwhelming set of data into a form which can be easily used, and we gladly note your stress on simplicity and ease of access. So that's very important. You have also stressed that citations are important and that we should feel free to share our own data as well. So thank you very much for this. We will get back to you with questions as the questions have started coming in. May I please welcome Dr. Uma from NCBS to present a talk.
Hi, everyone, and thanks for having me here. I'm going to share my screen now. Okay, so today I'm actually not speaking about my research at all, but an initiative we've been trying to incubate along with several others as part of the Biodiversity Collaborative. So, it's been very exciting to be with you all the last couple of days and to hear about, the grassroots work, bigger picture work, and all of the very exciting work which is happening by all of you in the Central Indian landscape. And I think that this mission, I hope, will be of interest to you in this context. So the National Mission for Biodiversity and Human Well-being was approved by the Office of the Principal Scientific Advisor, Government of India, in 2018, late 2018, and then also by the MOEF and the ministry with the NBA, the National Biodiversity Authority, with its key interest in biodiversity, shepherding this national mission. So what is this national mission? What is a mission? This is something which is a very big question, difficult question to answer. But at the bottom of it all is this very strong realization that nature is critical to human well-being in India, right? And so I think that is kind of the core behind this mission. And I and my colleague Jagdish, who's here, and also Mahesh Shankaran, also at NCBS, have been involved in helping out a little bit with one of the components. So basically, this mission has many verticals, from Nisarga Bharat to basically which links to the People's Biodiversity Registry, to other aspects like biodiversity ecosystem services that I'll talk about today, biodiversity, climate change, and disaster mitigation. Sorry, I lost power, it should be back. Also of interest to this group here, biodiversity and agriculture, One Health and zoonoses, medicinal plants and health security, biodiversity and bioeconomy, biodiversity and outreach, okay, capacity building and outreach. So obviously, all of these aspects are really critically important as we conceptualize how India is to go forward and also safeguard both biodiversity as well as human well-being. So in some sense, I think a lot of us, and this I'm very guilty of, maybe not everyone else, think of species and biodiversity, right? We think about charismatic species, or maybe our favorite species, but we are basically thinking about our way of thinking of nature is through a lens of species. So one of the big goals, I guess, here is to really try for us to also think about ecosystems, right? So it's not just about biodiversity, but how all of this biodiversity fits together. And we know, I don't need to go into details of this. You all know very well that nature provides us provisioning services, regulating services, supporting services, as well as cultural services. And Shekhar did a very nice job yesterday of linking how, showing how there's such a strong link between human well-being and nature and ecosystem services. But the thing is, it's one thing to talk about it, but can we actually quantify it? Because if we are to uh, gain political will for biodiversity, it cannot only be seen as something negative. I think that many times we talk about biodiversity loss and the negative consequences of that. But this is just a very simple example of a study by a PhD student at ATRI, Urvashi Pradhan, along with Saubhadra Devi, where they actually quantified the pollination services provided by honeybees for Mandarin orange, which is a crop unique to Sikkim, right, and North Bengal, and showed that when there were more honeybees, that was associated with larger fruit size, and higher numbers of honeybees were associated with forested patches. So basically, this is a direct link, then a quantifiable link in terms of produce between biodiversity at one level, ecosystems and forests, uh, which support populations and numbers of honeybees, right? So when we say quantification, this kind of quantification is very hard, especially for things like pollination, isn't it? I mean, it's probably when things can be quantified in a remote sense way, with some proxies, that might be easier. But this kind of quantification is actually quite hard and requires a lot of on the ground work. I mean, this also, of course, you all know that insects are declining. There's been some really nice work by actually a colleague of mine, which showed the impacts of pollution on insects, how it even affects their hearts and abilities to fly. So we are learning more and more about the mechanistic reasons for such decline. And so, of course, all of this quantification has to be done in the context of understanding that biodiversity is changing, land use is changing, and so we must adjust our quantifications to this change. So the mission, of course, should aim then to change such trajectories, to not just go down this slope, which seems almost inevitable. I mean, I guess for me, what's really hits all the time really hard is, I was born in 1972, and since then it seems like we have simply been losing biodiversity despite a lot of international engagement with the idea of biodiversity. So this is not at all a small ask, that can we change this trajectory and not have loss of services going ahead. So that said, these are all very lofty goals, but the bottom line is that India has never had a comprehensive assessment of services provided by various ecosystems or the threats they face. And such information will be critical for land use planning, in conserving India's biodiversity and its assets. And restoration will be then a big part of how this can be implemented. So, what will the National Mission for Biodiversity and Human Wellbeing actually do? These are all things you probably know, and they're kind of truisms, generally true. So, well, I guess the main thing is, and I hope that all of you will participate, that, it's not like we are going to go and do this work. The idea is that the national mission will facilitate a community of people on the ground, scientists, managers, public, to work together through grants to actually acquire both information and implement things. So I guess there's kind of two categories. One is information gaps or data gaps, and those will include, for example, quantifying and spatially mapping ecosystem services across the country, determining underlying drivers of service provisioning and ecosystem multifunctionality. Some ecosystems have trade-offs, whereas others have synergy. Some ecosystem services have trade-offs, whereas others have synergies. To quantify the temporal change in species, so biodiversity loss itself in terms of extinctions, and how ecosystems are changing because of invasions or novel ecosystems created by new sets of species, non-analog communities. And then basically to actively participate both through restoration and large landscape scale conservation. And so here the idea will be, there will be large grants, multi institutional collaborative grants to on the ground implement restoration, implement landscape scale conservation. And here I'm hoping that there will be many of you coming together to apply for these grants for the Central Indian landscape and region. The final objective is also to facilitate, more interaction. And what Pinky talked about was very exciting. We also hope to develop digital, spaces for this information to be stored and accessed by the public. So in many ways, SILS is a model for how we can start thinking about things. You guys have already been doing it. So I'm going to stop there and just leave you with this picture, just to remind us that I've been going on about quantification, and as a scientist, that's what is drilled into our heads. But this picture, beautiful picture by Prasanjit from Meghalaya, showing a root bridge, and villages encourage the growth of these bridges. I think Jagdish, my colleague, was just on one, and these are also ways which nature provides services to people, and they're inherent and ingrained in every part of India. So I hope that we'll be able to, understand a bit more about this also from a quantitative perspective. Thanks very much for having me, and I'll stop there. I hope I did okay on time.
Yes, Umar, thank you very much. It was a very spot on presentation. We will get back with the questions if you are still available, and we can request Dr. Jagdish to continue with the presentation, please.
No, I think Pinky is next. Isn't that right? Sorry,
Prachi.
Next. Yeah, sorry.
Okay. Yes. So can I request Prachi to make presentation? Thanks.
Thank you, Naveen, and thank you, NCCI, for having me here. I'm happy to be a part of CIS this year and also share the exciting new initiatives that WWF has been a part of. Most of these have been collaborative initiatives to work on connectivity conservation. I will quickly share my screen and share a few things we've been working on over the last 1 year. So connectivity conservation is critical for conservation of threatened species and maintaining ecosystem ecological flows and processes. Most of the changes that have been happening to natural landscapes are due to increasing human footprints, habitat degradation, and that is resulting in fragmentation of natural landscapes. The map here on the screen represents forest patches and a road network across India. And roads and other linear infrastructure are one of the major threats for connectivity and movement of species across large landscapes. But linear infrastructure is not the only threat and not even the only major threat. There are several other challenges for connectivity conservation. There's landscape has been changing. There's a lack of effective land use scale planning at a regional scale in India. We still have a growing human population, and there's conflict in these areas that are important for connectivity, mostly outside protected areas. There's been increasing research on connectivity and connectivity conservation from India over the last decade. And there have been several NGOs along with the Forest Department who've been working in corridors on with the communities, or even monitoring of corridors for wildlife use. But the challenges that connectivity conservation faces, it's difficult to address. It's difficult for one single organization, or even with a few focused efforts, to address connectivity conservation at scale. And hence, thinking beyond organization boundaries and collaborating to be able to make a difference in a rapidly changing landscape and at a large scale, it's important to have collaborations across NGOs. And with this thought, a few NGOs that got together a few years back in April 2018 in Delhi at a workshop on connectivity conservation discussed developing such a collaboration and having a sort of a coalition for wildlife corridors. And as for any multi NGO collaborations, it really took a while for different individuals and organizations to come together. And last year in 2020 February, we formally kickstarted our coalition with 9 NGOs that you can see on the screen, a shared vision for connectivity conservation in India. We also developed shared objectives for the Coalition for Wildlife Corridors, and these largely fall under 3 main categories. One is profiling and generating knowledge database on corridors. Second is science and monitoring. And third is policy advocacy and action for corridors. And the way we are working towards these objectives is that we identified a few questions, focal themes, and specific activities that we're working towards as by making small working groups of people across NGOs. There are some 4 to 5 activities that we decided to work on over the last year, and we still at different stages of finishing those specific activities. And I'll just give a few examples of the work that the coalition has started to do together. So one of the things that one of the working groups from the coalition is working on is looking at the corridor sections of the tiger conservation plans. The NCCI has extensive guidelines for developing the conservation, the corridor sections of TCPs. And what we are essentially doing is looking at the different corridor sections of TCPs and trying to look at whether in the context of the NCCI guidelines, the recent scientific advances are all the essential things incorporated in these TCPs. Another challenge often with the TCPs is that the corridors that they make the plans for are outside their jurisdictions. So most corridors are territorial forest divisions between 2 protected areas where tiger reserves may or may not have jurisdictions to apply these plans. So we're trying to identify gaps, potential opportunities to improve these tiger connectivity plans. And then as a next step of the same effort, we're planning to have a workshop with the Forest Department staff, the field directors who are in charge of developing and implementing these plans, to then look at what are the challenges of implementing once we identify the gaps, and then together develop a strategy and improve the framework for TCPs, and also bring synergy between the different plans for a corridor. For example, 2 tiger reserves, Kana and Pinch, would make a plan for the corridor that they share. So how do they talk to each other? How do we develop a synergy between them, and so on? Another thing we're planning to do is develop a data portal that would be like go-to place for all information on corridors. So on this data portal, the main thing that we're going to focus on is developing a database on corridors and sort of developing corridor profiles. This portal will also have background data like infrastructure and a few other layers. But there are portals. There's India under construction. There's also the Central India portal that Pinky spoke about that has already given a lot of thought and a lot of effort has gone into collating different layers and developing a country scale database. So what we will focus here as a part of the coalition is to compile all the existing information on corridors, published, and also information that sometimes is with the different organizations and NGOs working in the landscapes. It can be spatial information, it can be information on jurisdiction, on the threats, on the communities living in the corridors, and so on. So we've developed a framework for developing these profiles, and right now we're working on developing sort of indicators for which can be used to indicate status of a corridor in terms of its ecology, in terms of threats, in terms of opportunities that there may be for conservation. So this is another activity we are working towards as a part of the coalition. And a web data portal, along with a data portal, we'll also have a front-end website where we'll talk about popular policy, legislation related to corridors, popular science, and so on. Some of the other things that the coalition has been working on are a couple of perspective pieces. One, we just finished, we are wrapping up, we are finishing up a review on connectivity research in South Asia, and we're finding some interesting results as a part of that review. So there are a few scientific publications that we're planning to do, a lot of popular sort of pieces, and along with these written communication and analyses, there's also we're also planning to develop standardized monitoring protocols for corridors. So while we work in different landscapes and on different corridors, having a standardized framework, so A, data is comparable, B, same can go on the portal, and there are links that are created across different scales when we talk of monitoring and data. So these are some of the ongoing things that the coalition is working on. So that's the Coalition for Wildlife Corridors part. So along with being a part of Coalition for Wildlife Corridors, WWF is also specifically working in Central India along with NCCI. And what we're planning to do is we are working in Central India at two different scales. One is the landscape scale, and Amrita and Jay have spoken about the tiger consensus corridors and compiling information from all the different studies on tiger studies across Central India, restrictions or management. Part of this project, we've called it Wildlife Connect in Central India. We will take it to the next step. We'll add other information to make these corridor profiles complete. And along with tiger consensus corridor, we also want to look at how these tiger corridors do they work for other species? Of course, there's not much data on functional connectivity of other species, but there's a lot of other data on occupancy, on habitat use, and so on that can be used. So we're looking at all different data that's available for Central India and kind of profiling these connectivity spaces and not just specific corridors in the landscape. Along with that, we plan to do a deep dive and look at the Satpura Pench corridor. This map on top is a map from WCT. They had done camera trapping in 2017 and found, this is just for representation and shows jungle cat locations, but they had done camera trapping in forested areas for several species. So this is not just a functional corridor for tigers, but there are several corridor dwellers in this that use this corridor. And like most corridors in Central India, it's a multi-use corridor. So there's agriculture patches. There are a few mines that are now abandoned. There's of course linear infrastructure and so on. So we want to do a few things in this corridor. One is the several functional connectivity studies like the map here. Predict potential corridors based on functional connectivity. And what we plan to do is validate these corridors, the boundaries of these corridors, and also focus on the agricultural areas within these corridors. We know from genetic data and from radio collar data that agriculture is extensively used in Central India. But we want to look at the different crop types and how they influence use by different species, not just tigers. And the third thing that we want to do is engage with not just forest department and NGOs, but also across different sectors, uh, mining sector, agriculture sector, and so on. So we plan to build partnerships with NGOs and across different sectors to address connectivity conservation in the landscape, and hope to develop a plan, a sort of multi-stakeholder plan, because although there are ESZ and other sort of legal avenues for conserving corridors, very little area in central India is under any such protection categories. And having these uh, uh, multi-stakeholder plans where the different stakeholders have different agendas, and how do we reconcile that and look at corridor conservation together is something we are looking forward to exploring. So with that, on that note, I'll thank you for your attention. And I welcome you to participate with us on any of the collaborative initiatives. Thank you.
Thanks, Prachi. It's a wonderful presentation, and it's good to know about the work done under Coalition for Wildlife Corridors. You have raised a very often ignored view and information that most corridors, they fall under territorial forest division, and that is something which often gets ignored. And it's interesting to know that you have been working on framework and indicators for corridor profiles, and glad that we will have a standardized corridor monitoring. Right, Claudio from Wild Crew, along with Kishore Rite. So first Claudio will start, and Kishore Rite will take it up further.
Good afternoon. Tell me if you can see my screen.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Doesn't appear. Okay. Yes. Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. Good morning for those ones on this end of the world. It's been great to share this this event and the presentations. And you know, yesterday and the day before, we heard a lot about collaboration and coalitions and partnerships and so on. And clearly, that is the language of conservation and biological research these days. Clearly, we are more comfortable with collaborations in the academic sector, but this is a concept that has grown into the NGO sector as well. I'm going to tell you a little bit about the concept of SLTP that started as the Satpura Landscape Tiger Program originally, and transmitted into a partnership which better represents what it is we're trying to achieve. I started traveling to India in 2003, 2004, and I was fortunate to meet many of you and some formidable people working in central India to protect those forests and the biodiversity that they harbor. I was familiar with networking concepts. At the turn of the century, I got involved in my native South America with a group of conservationists working across 4 countries, Argentina, Chile, Bolivia, and Peru, on Andean cats. And I supported them in establishing the Andean Cat Alliance. And that was quite a challenge, because we had to get people working and organizations working across 4 countries, and they're still going strong. And when I started traveling to India, the idea came to me is that perhaps this is something that we could promote and try to get some of our Indian colleagues involved with. So it was with support and stewardship from the Born Free Foundation in the UK and Wild Crew at the University of Oxford, where I work, that we brought some people together. And there was early on a bit of a gluing factor was the perspectives of getting funding through this partnership. And the funding originated largely from Born Free, which to date has contributed well in excess of £1 million to members of the partnership. But it wasn't just the funding, it was the opportunity of people to talk and work across the landscape. And those grants that originally came as conservation bursaries were core funding, so the partners had the freedom to use them to supporting what they needed most. And that in a way leverage and release opportunities for more grants to be raised by partners. And I don't have the figures, but there's been quite significant grants that have been brought about thanks to the power of the partnership. Currently, we have 8 NGOs represented from India and 2 institutions from the UK. The principle is that the partnership remains open to other people with common interests that we like to work. It extends beyond the Satpura landscape, which here I equate with Central India landscape because of the common theme of the participants of this meeting. But it goes a little bit beyond, because for instance, in this map showing the various tiger reserves where the partners are involved, we're missing Pana. So it's Pana farther to the northwest here, where Bagban, one of our partners, operates. And clearly, this is not a traditional discrete conservation project, as one would assume, in the sense that there was an original donor contributing to it. But the aim all along has been to develop a network and a funding tool through that network to enable people like you to do good work where it's needed and reach that potential. And as we have learned from yesterday presentations, this is not just about tigers, it's not just about science, it's not just about forest cover. This is very much about the sustainability of protecting biodiversity in a system where people are central. And I think that I speak on behalf of my esteemed colleagues in India, that this is all about sustaining the lives of tigers and people, which nicely fits in with our SLTP acronym. So what does the network seek to achieve? First of all, is an egalitarian democratic the network is apolitical, but I would say politically astute, and it seeks to bring full potential. So we believe that the sum of the parts adds more to the total when you bring collaboration. But understandably, when NGOs look at other NGOs working in a similar landscape, sometimes there are concerns about the areas of operation, some form of territoriality in ecological terms, if you wish. There is competition as well for limited funding and resources. There is might be distrust because some people are collaborating with government, others less. And clearly what networks can do is to allay those fears and focus on the positives of working together. The work, like a lot of the work you have presented on, tends to happen outside tiger reserves, but working closely with the forest departments that are responsible for the formal protection of those areas. And clearly, buffer areas around tiger reserves and those corridors we've been discussing for the last 2 years, where a lot of impact can be had. I'm not presenting results of what the various partners do, but just very briefly, I just go over a long list of things that they do, and they do very well. They concern with policy and supporting protected areas, dealing with tiger-man conflict, supporting legal cases, trying to bring in additional protected habitat on board. And in the 18 years or so I've been involved, with my Indian colleagues, it's great to see how the number and the area of forest habitat under protection in central India continues to grow. But clearly, it's central to provide support to local communities, particularly those that might have been relocated outside core tiger habitats, working with improving livelihoods, healthcare, self-reliance, access to clean energy is clearly an important one, and we heard about that yesterday. Education in a more traditional terms, and building the capacity at all levels, rural communities to be better at what they do and do it more sustainably, NGOs, government, and so on. The work happens either undertaken by one of the partners or in collaborations between two or more partners that might have access to a particular grant. And there are discrete areas of work at landscape level, looking at monitoring threats and keeping the pressure on governments to act, mobile education units, mobile health units that bring critical health service to people that live in remote areas and far away from hospitals. Conservation units focusing on the conservation and sustainable livelihoods, and some more technical work focusing on scientific data and conflict resolution. It was great to see the initiatives to make more data accessible publicly and so on, and I'm sure that several of our partners will be interested to get involved in that process. How do we keep this together? Through communications. We have become very close friends with among partners, and we have this annual excitement that we all look forward to when we come together into an annual seminar, and this will take place in a given tiger landscape. This is a fairly old photo, but it will be a typical gathering. We will bring forest department representatives as well, and some guests picking up a particular topic, like we have done for this seminar, and get together for 4 days, debating these topics, doing a bit of business on the side, and some fun safaris as well. But I would say that the greatest asset of the network is clearly the people. These highly motivated colleagues based in central India and responsible for the implementation of all these activities are the heart of these initiatives. It's things that, don't work just by throwing logos into a screen. It's just the people behind those logos and those organizations and their passion and motivation that enables you to do the work. And in this case, I have to say that is incredibly good value for money, because of the ability of people to master the teams and to do things very efficiently is just awesome. So I think that by adding the voices of each and every one of these community conservationists and providing a little bit of a structure, we build that capacity and that political will that ensures that wildlife, forests, the charismatic flagship species, if you wish, like the tigers, have an increasingly strong voice in what is a very competitive environment in India, trying to get to the attention of the public and of the policymakers. So just a few faces of our heroes, if we might call them, representing the various organizations within the SLTP network. What I like to do now is just to pass on to my good friend Kishore Rite to give us just the perspective from being a member of this network. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Claudio, for giving this wonderful presentation on what Satpura Landscape Tiger Partnership is doing in the Central Indian landscape. I would just like to highlight on one or two important points. As we have discussed in last 3 days, there are several threats to the landscape. And when you talk about the conservation actions, you need a strategy, you need a effective strategy, and to implement the effective strategy you need to have the partnerships. So what we usually see that people and the organizations are very good when the issue comes of implementing the ideas at a personal level and the institutional levels, but they have different capacities. We need to bring all these capacities together, and that's what is possible through a very effective network like SLTP. And I still remember SLTP network is now 16 years old. And when we launched this network, that time people used to know only Western Ghats and not much awareness about the Central Indian landscape. And that time this network formed, and the funding mechanism was established to plan and implement these ideas. And that's why if you see that this network is working on education, health, conservation actions, and when you talk about research-based conservation actions, you need to club research outcomes with the data. And when you work with the different stakeholders, sometimes you need to also have require to take the legal interventions. But not every organization or individual is very comfortable with the legal interventions. But this is the beauty of this network. You will get all sort of organizations working together, research-based organization, the conservation organization, the community, the organization who has got a very strong community base. So they're all together. And the platform is such that we discuss the common strategy, and most of the members are sitting, the head of the organizations are sitting in the State Board for Wildlife and different policy making bodies. And that's really helped the network to implement its policy on ground. I think this is what the SLTP has done in last 16 years. And you can see many achievements, though Claudio has not mentioned here the achievements, but you take the linear infrastructure, you take the mining areas, and this network has very effectively won many battles just because of the support of the government officers, the media, the judicial system, and the partners' own capacity. So thank you very much for giving us opportunity to explain the strengths and the strengths of Satpura Landscape Tiger Partnership.
Thank you, Claudio and Mr. Kishore Rite for briefing about SLTP. As a part of SLTP being in Corbett Foundation, I am a witness to the good work that SLTP partners have done in Central India. And we note Claudio's phrase, positives of working together. And we also note the stress on site-specific experiences of various partners that helps to deliver remarkable value for money. Thank you very much, Claudio and Kishore Rite bhai. Now we will shift to question answer session, and may I request all our presenters to switch on their cameras, if they can switch on the video. So thank you very much, all of you, for your wonderful presentations. Very precise, very relevant, and very, very clear in content and thought. So we have a good number of questions. We will try to take them as many as possible in the prescribed time limit. We have looked at to make conservation decisions, we need different types of data. These include information on things like the cost of carrying out a given conservation action, current condition of sites, the distribution and intensity of threats. There are many types of data. And Pinky has today presented on the data dashboard. So the first question is directed to Pinky. So what is the reason for the NCCI knowledge platform for the next 5 years? And there is an additional question attached. That is the platform live now? And are there any way we can get notified about new data uploads to the platform? So once you respond to this, then I'll put up another question to you, Pinky. Please.
Thanks, Naveen. Yes, the data dashboard is live now. It can be accessed by anybody. And that was the whole point of having this data dashboard, so that the data can be distributed to anyone who is interested in using this data. So yes, please go pay a visit and let us know if you find any glitches. It's my undergraduate student Justin Check and I kind of worked on this data dashboard. So if you find something, we would definitely appreciate hearing about it. If you find any problem, feel free to send an email to our NCCI email. So if you go to our Networking for Conserving Central India website, you will find a way to reach out to us and we will take care of it. About the vision, so I anticipated this and we put a very brief mission and vision statement on the about page of the data dashboard. So if you go there, you will see that the objective is to provide easy access to up-to-date multi-source data. So as we learned through different presentations, and there are so many relevant data sets that are coming out. Many times as scientists, we are just not comfortable sharing that data and we sit on it, and then years go by. And by the time someone else is trying to access that data, it's probably too late. That's particularly relevant for quickly changing or rapidly evolving landscapes. So that's where you come in. You as a developer and a user, we want to hear from you so that if you have published your paper, we would really want to hear from you, nominating your data set so that we can host it. So the vision is to add on more categories. So right now we have land use, land cover, and climate data, but there are so many other categories that might be relevant. So maybe we can add a tab on water data, so anything relevant. And sometimes what I have realized after talking to many students, that simple data sets, maybe a river network, or maybe shapefiles, boundary shapefiles for protected areas. Now, these are probably available somewhere. But if I, as a scientist, have already spent time to put together, GIS compatible data set and used it for my study, why do I need another student to go through that process again? So the idea is to have these data sets available here so that students, community workers, other researchers, they don't have to reinvent the wheel again. Now, there could be some legal ramifications. So we have to keep that in mind, that some data sets that are already available on other platforms, they might not let us to do it again. So, we can discuss about that later. But yes, please go pay a visit to the website. It's up and it's live, and you are welcome to download any data set that you want there. And you are obviously expected to share your data set with us.
Thanks, Minky. This is precise and clear. And you have stressed in presentation also about citations, role of citations. They are very important. So there is another question to you only. We are taking questions first to you. So the question is that, can the platform link to data sets such as WRI Restoration Atlas or India Under Construction?
Absolutely. So there can be two ways to do it. So one could be is that we just create a page so that you are aware of those data sets, and just put a link to that data set that will take you directly to the host websites. Sometimes, these are complicated data sets, large data sets may be available for the globe or for, Southeast Asia or India. We can also work with the host website or host institution to see if they're okay for us to just clip it for the central Indian landscape and then host that one on our website, obviously with reference to the original website. So it has to be seen how we can do it. So more data nominations we receive, the better we would get at hosting data sets that are already available at other websites.
Thank you. I'll get back to you again because there are a few more questions for you. I'd like to have Prachi respond to a question wherein we have been asked our government organizations like the NCCI, they're part of the coalition. And if not, can you talk a little bit about your strategy to work with the government as you develop your corridor plan? Prachi, please.
Yeah, that's a very good question. And we would like to have more partners on the coalition. There's no specific reason for it. It's just the history of how it began, and with NGOs coming together and developing this vision for a coalition on corridors. But all kind of conservation work in corridors, the way we've been thinking about it is in partnership with the forest department and the government, including NTCA. So there's been communication with the different departments and in NTCA with several of the coalition members having regular interaction with NTCA and others. It's also with the forest department and NTCA how the working of these organizations is. NGOs work in a similar way, and as a group can engage with these larger NTCN organizations. WII, of course, can be a part of the coalitions, and NCBS or any other government organization as well, along with A3, NCF, and so on. So this is just a small group that has initially come together. We are open to more partnerships, and everyone's welcome to join the coalition.
Thanks, Prachi. I completely agree that partnerships are very organic in nature. They keep evolving, and SLTP is a beautiful example how partnership grows and how membership and partners get on board based on their site-specific skills and capabilities. Thank you very much. So there is another question which has been directed to Pinky and Prachi both. And it says, like, in addition to data and corridor specific data, we need to have an early alert system about upcoming projects. This also came up on day one about projects in corridors coming into knowledge when it is really late. So could that be incorporated in these data sets?
Sure, I'll go first maybe on this. So we did discuss this where the working group that's working on developing the data portal did discuss, and this is a very important thing. It's just there are two levels to it. So there's the background data of large scale layers, there's specific corridor profiles, and there's linking all this to specific upcoming projects. And what would be great actually to have automation of those projects, which we can, when they come up, when we get to know about it, to have a spatial representation of them. But that's not very straightforward. With the Parivesh website, yes, a lot of information is online, and but that's probably still at a slightly later stage, right? When it comes on the Parivesh website, that information can be linked. That's not the first thing we are doing as a part of the portal, but that's definitely on cards. That's definitely we are considering and discussing how best to do it. And Pinky can And if there are similar thoughts with the Central India Data Portal, we are also open to discussing it with, because I'm sure several organizations internally and also collaborations and initiatives have been thinking of such things, that while the landscape changes, we're already too late, and then there's some court case as the last resort. So how do we do this better? And we're open to discussions, and we're thinking about it.
And I agree with Prachi. So there's one thing that I think NCCI as a group can achieve, is that I envision the NCCI website, which is not the Data Collab website, the other NCCI main website, to be a venue for announcing these new projects. And once we have these new projects, we know of these new projects coming up, then NCCI as a community can convince the authors, the data authors, to share their data with any other data collaboration platform, and we'd be happy to be a part of it. One thing to understand is that we are hosting data, and we cannot do that unless the data are available either on a website or shared by the authors. So the more we are involved as a community, the better it is, the better the data portals will be.
Thanks, Pinky. I couldn't agree more. This is very precise. There is a question for Dr. Jagdish. Will the National Mission for Biodiversity and Human Wellbeing provide funding and have grants available?
So I hope that, okay, can you hear me? Yeah.
Okay. Yes, please go ahead.
Yeah, so so right now, when we are in the sort of precursor phase of the National Biodiversity Mission, and we are preparing what is known as a roadmap, which is basically how it will be implemented. Because we know that a mission of this kind, with so many dimensions, linking biodiversity to all aspects of human well-being that Uma nicely presented, is a huge task. So basically, the idea is to raise the profile of biodiversity in all aspects of governance, and raise the profile of biodiversity and ecosystem services, as she mentioned, to generate a lot of political will, which for conservation. So, so obviously this requires a huge network of organizations spread across people working on the ground, the NGOs, academia, and so on. So what we are envisaging in the roadmap for the implementation of the national mission when it comes through is a series of consortium grants. So let's take the Central Indian landscape, for example, because ecological restoration is very biome specific and ecosystem specific, right? So if you're talking about restoring a mangrove, the situation, or an estuary, or even trying to restore a riparian forest, is very different from trying to restore grasslands or any other type of ecosystem. So it's also very specific to the socioeconomic and the capacity available within a particular landscape, and so on. So what we are envisaging is that these grants will be given to consortia. So encourage people to form partnerships. So if you take Central India, clearly, it's not just the scientific institutions and like people such as you who are represented in this meeting, but also others that you are that you know of, and many other organizations. They will form partnerships, and the grant could be, I'm just giving a small grant, might be for 30 to 40 crores. I mean, that's, and a large one might be 100 crores. But that requires a lot of accountability and a lot of stewardship of performance and many other indicators, especially with respect to ecological restoration. So restoration is a big part of it, and so is capacity building, so is filling knowledge gaps, all the things that have been discussed by Pinky and Prachi and others are all part of that, fitting in with that. So we hope that most of the money will actually go to these large, to these consortium. So we think that the whole of the country, if you have to address the issue of biodiversity and ecosystem services, it will require hundreds of people to be involved. if not thousands. So that is going to be the one type of the funding. The other one are core grants. Core grants are basically things that everybody will benefit from. So for example, let's say that we generate a layer for the whole of India on ecosystem services, quantifying and mapping it. Now that layer should be verified on the ground with ground measurements, calibrated, everything. You know, it will obviously use a combination of remote sensing, ground measurements, models, semi-empirical models, as well as mechanistic models. And all of that, you will generate some sort of a high quality layer, which we hope will then be the go-to repository for any type of decision making. Let's say it's an environmental impact assessment. There shouldn't be any doubts about, okay, where do you, what type of information is available on the ecosystem attributes or ecosystem services of a particular region. We should be able to say that this is the best available information for the site, and this is what should inform the decision making or policies related to land use change or environmental impact assessment or whatever, or even the planning for a project. So that's the other type of grants which will generate core grants, which will be for filling up urgent knowledge gaps. And then the second type of grants that I mentioned to you are the implementation grants, which are going to be given to competitive consortia, which means that we put out a description of what the like a call for grants, and it will be very specific to different landscapes and ecosystems and so on. And then if we suppose, let's say that a particular type of service, pollination services, there's a knowledge gap in, say, some part of Northeast India, there could be a grant which is going to bring together organizations and individuals who will be able to apply for something like that. Similarly, for Central India, it could be some other theme that which might be a gap in terms of things to be done. So right now, this roadmap is still being developed, and we really hope that that this mission, when it does get onto the ground, will be very different from previous missions in terms of participation of various non-governmental and a variety of institutions, including business as well.
Thanks, Dr. Jagdish, for your very clear and detailed reply. There is a question from Claudio and Kishore Bhai. You have been involved in a very long partnership. SLTP is now in the second decade of its existence. So the question, what are some of the challenges that you have seen from your real life challenges running a long-lasting network, and any learning to share with everyone here working to build networks and partnerships that last? Claudio and Kishore Bhai, please.
Thank you. I'll go first then, Naveen. The experiences are many, and I think we learn as we go. That's unavoidable. But I think the greatest lesson is that we are social animals, and we need to communicate. If we communicate well and we develop relationships, then things can happen rather smoothly. And I recall in the early days, there was some distrust and uncertainty between individuals about where this collaboration might take. And it's only through time and getting to know each other that these things can be smoothed out. So if there is one take-home message, is don't give up. If you're trying to collaborate, you're trying to develop a relationship with other colleagues, don't give up early. Just apply yourself and give it a go. Get to know people better. And then once you identify the commonalities between what you're trying to achieve, then things are made a lot easier. The other constraint I perceive, and this is not just with Central India, but nearly with conservation everywhere, is a matter of scale, that we can do things very well at a local scale, because you get to know the community, you get to know your government counterparts, you develop trust and reputation, and you can get very good at. But then scaling up is the real challenge, because you might be having an impact. We were talking about lantana yesterday and clearing. lantana in an X number of plots. But then how do you go to the next order of magnitude? The same when you work with conflict resolution, reclaiming habitat and whatnot. Is that scale that comes over again. And it's good to know that there are sources of funding that can cope with that level of scaling up. So if you're good at doing something at the local level, and I think it was Kishore, it might have been your summing up, Naveen, that SLTP partners are very good at what they do locally, and they add the expertise because they work in different areas and so on. But it's just that scaling up and being able to replicate the good work elsewhere. That's where the challenge lies. And of course, that can only be addressed with funding, but having the communication and the trust in place before the funding comes in is essential.
Thank you, Claudio. Kishore, would you like to add on to this?
Yeah, I will just take it further where the Claudio has left. Once you have a better understanding within the group, within the individuals and the institutions, and you start working together, then you identify some bigger issues, and your capacities are more to handle the bigger issues and bigger threats. So that's what we have experienced in last 16 years as far as the SLTP is concerned. And there were a lot of challenges when you fight the bigger conservation battles. Then there are different stakeholders and there are different undercurrents to the issue. So, and it's not possible for only few organizations or individuals to go at the root level of all these issues. And there are media partners, there are honorary wildlife wardens working at the grassroots level. There are smaller organizations who are not part of the SLTP. There are definitely smaller organizations which are part of the SLTP, but there are other social organizations who are attached to the partners. So you bring everything together, and that's how you get the more strength. You take any example like the notification of buffer areas to the tiger reserves where there are coal mines proposed, and then still the government was reluctant to issue the notifications, and these NGOs, SLTP, came together and worked on a common strategy, and it put pressure on the government, and government notified the buffer. Not only notifications, but again, there are several examples of implementing the programs at the grassroots level. So I think if such kind of group comes together, then you have more strengths, better strengths to fight the bigger battles. And right now, Central Indian Highlands have got such threats which requires bigger strengths. And I hope the CILS, SLTP should definitely work together and join the strengths for the conservation of Central Indian landscape. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I completely agree. So partnership requires patience, strength, and trust. Thank you very much. There are a couple of observations from researchers attending this. So there's a trend that most of the presentations talk about either Kanha Pinch or Satpura study or Kanha corridor or Sanjay. So the question is that what we the attached question to it is that will we see more on water neighboring systems in Central India? So I will request any of you to respond to it, and I'll definitely like to hear from Pinky as well. This.
Just to jump in here, I think Naveen, your audio was not clear, so I'll repeat the comment. The comment was there's a lot of work that happens on Satpura and Pench and Kanha, but not so much between Kanha and Achanakmar. And why is this the case? Why don't we see, why isn't that highlighted? Why is that corridor ignored? And I think Naveen, you wanted to go, do you want to go Prachi, or where do you want to go with this? Okay, Prachi, do you want to take that?
Yeah, just to quickly, I agree. Most research has been focused on Kanha Pench. There's a lot of work in Kanha Pench and now also Satpura Pench. But there's increasingly all organizations, including government and non-governmental, have been working in other corridors. WWF over the last 2 years has surveyed the Sanjay Bandhavgarh corridor and is working in currently in Gurudhasidas National Park. They're surveying we surveying the Kanha Achanakmar corridor as well. And there's not just corridor surveys. There's also been engagement at different levels. So there's some work with the communities on sustainable harvest of honey. There's some work with millets that's being initiated, and there's at least engagement. WWF has been working in the Kanha Chanakmar and Sanjay Bandhavgarh corridors. But I agree, overall, there's the focus has been on these corridors, and we need to look at others as well.
So I think Naveen has just dropped off and he might join us again. And I'm just going to quickly pose another question on his behalf. And this was to Jagdish. Jagdish, how many other national missions does the Mission on Biodiversity and Human Wellbeing interact with? And at the national level, is there acknowledgement that nature is sort of foundational block to a lot of these things? Is that where these missions are coming from? Or are we as a community really trying to get that thinking on the map?
Yeah, so in terms of national buy-in at the highest level, this is one of the originally they were, I think, 8 national missions. There are things like nanotechnology. There's one on artificial intelligence and various areas of management and so on. So if you go to the PM Stack website, you will see the other missions, and so the importance is the fact that biodiversity, the word biodiversity exists in one of the national missions itself, I think is a big thing as a starting point. And we hope that it will gain the stature of all the other missions. You know, you keep hearing about many national initiatives, and we hope that when it gets off the ground, it will start impacting the work of various ministries, various other government bodies, as well as other institutions, because clearly in the Ministry of Environment, Forests and Climate Change at the central level, and just the forest departments at the state level, if we have to really make a big dent in how we are relating to ecosystem services and biodiversity and conservation, we need to go beyond all of this. And so that is, I think, the main, if the mission is going to be successful, it will have to start impacting the work of, you know, how a highway is being made, or how agriculture is going to be promoted in certain areas, how and, you know, the very big things that are going to be really difficult. How is it going to impact, for example, dams and many other projects which are coming up? I know it's a tall order, but we hope that even if we are able to make a 20 to 30% difference in the way these things are done, I think having the government already recognize it as one of the eight missions means that it's difficult to go back on this, right? So there is a commitment at the highest level, and we hope that that the backing you know, in terms of political will at both center and state will come behind this mission. But there's a lot of hard work to be done before we can reach that stage. And so all of us, you know, all of you, everybody will have to be alert to how we can mobilize our in terms of our thinking, in terms of what discourse, so that this mission can truly become a success. So that's basically, so we're just hopeful, we're optimistic, because if, you know, in conservation, you have to be optimistic.
Thanks, Jagdish. I'm going to hand back to you, Naveen.
Am I audible? I'm having a poor network at my end.
We can hear you, but perhaps if you want to keep your video off just to save bandwidth, maybe that'll help for now.
Yeah, thank you. So there is a question for Pinky. So there is a concern that new rules and regulations that the government of India has put forth is quite restrictive in nature about sharing quite a lot of biodiversity data, including digital ones, beyond the academic arena. So, do you think it? Do you find it as a concern? And what would you suggest to make it more inclusive to accommodate such concern?
That's a great question. So I'm not a wildlife geneticist or a microbiologist, so I don't know a lot about this particular rule. From what I read, I think probably the commenter also shared a link. It was about restriction on sharing samples, like biological samples. So that's different from the data that we are hosting on this website. Now, you also mentioned not like restrictions on sharing digital data. I'm not quite sure about the nature of that digital data. If it's like, if there's a restriction in place, then of course we cannot host it on the website. And if it's a government rule, that's obviously way beyond our scope, right? But what we can do, as I said, that if there's a data set hosted by someone or some other institute, we can definitely put up a page and redirect you. So if you come to the Central India Data Collab, you would know what's available. You can either download it directly from our website or you would know where to go. So that's for now is our vision. Of course, we want more inclusivity in data sharing, but that's something, again, we have to work together as a community, because I don't think any one of us could pressurize upper admin wherever we are to share data if they're putting a restriction on it. It's unfortunate that there are restrictions, but I understand there might be some reasons behind it. So we just have to wait and see how it goes.
Thank you, Pinky. I'd like to go back to Prachi just for one final question from her, directed to her. Is that it's about a concern about the bureaucratic processes in which a lot of data gets lost actually. So the forest departments collect data periodically using camera traps and even social surveys. In some cases, huge data sets get lost due to confusing bureaucratic processes and lack of academic will within the department. So how can we improve access to such data or engage with forest departments in data sharing? I mean, this is slightly on a different domain, but still it will be good if you can respond to it, please.
Yeah,
Prachi.
great question, and definitely relevant when we say we're trying to collate all the data across NGOs and organizations. Forest departments do carry out a lot of extensive surveys in territorial forest divisions also, and that data will be a value of conservation. So we should definitely, while we've not tried getting that data yet, we should definitely try and think of the ways we can engage with it and collaborate with the forest department right from the beginning on something. Whether that can be shared on a public portal or not is a call that the government and their policies, it will depend on that. But just the data access for any kind of analysis or information or making a plan specifically for that corridor should not be too much of a problem. So at that scale, it might be possible. Also, at a slightly, say, landscape scale, one way is also through permits. Like, so for example, we're also thinking of using conflict data as a part of something that I presented that we are going to do with NCCI. So this can be acquired through formal permissions that we can apply to the forest department for. So that's one way of accessing certain kind of data. Some data they might be more sensitive about than some other, and we can think of different ways of engagement for that.
Thanks, Prachi. We are spot on with our question answer session timing, but I'd like to just take a brief follow-up with Dr. Jagdish on whether the grantees under national mission will get access to access to some data pertaining to their work. So Dr. Jagdish, if you can briefly speak about it.
Yeah, so as part of our precursor grant, we have actually generated some layers. So, things like, we know that in India, greening and browning has been happening for various types of biomes and ecosystems. Now, not all of the greening is good and not all of the browning is bad. And it depends on the type of ecosystem that we are talking about, and also the ecosystem services, the implications for biodiversity, invasive species. All of that, all of this audience doesn't need to, they're well aware of all these issues. And so, so we are actually have generated something which is a greening and browning since early 1980s using an eco-climatic distance approach, which is a multi-date NDVI, Mara-Lopez distance, whatever. The paper was published some years ago in the remote sensing of environment by me and others. And now that was originally done only for the Western Ghats, and now we have done it for the whole country. And we hope that we will, of course, offer it as soon as possible to Dr. Pinky and her great site. So what we want is actually for interpretation by people who are familiar with each of these. So in Central Indian landscape, for example, the greening, browning can be better interpreted by people who have traveled a lot, who know specific sites very well, who have been monitoring it for a few decades, or have ground measurements. So that's the type of engagement that we're really looking forward to at this stage. But we hope that there are lots of different types of knowledge gaps that we urgently need to fill. And the team that currently is working on the precursor grant doesn't have the capacity to do it by themselves, or even sometimes in terms of training or for certain types of layers. So we hope that we will soon be able to engage with a large network of people to quickly fill those knowledge gaps. The idea is that these layers should be ready when those grants are announced, so that if a consortium wants to put together a proposal on a certain theme, they should be able to go to the portal or website and say that this is what we are going to be doing using the information that's already been generated and build on that. So that's we want to facilitate that. So we have had some experience of doing that for the Western Ghats through the Critical Ecosystem Partnership Fund, where certain types of, like an ecosystem profile was prepared for the Western Ghats, which would inform or help the grantees actually write good proposals using the information already out there in public domain. So we hope that something similar for the whole country will be made available soon, and that would then help the grantees put together good proposals based on the best available information. So that's the vision we have for the moment as far as data and information is concerned.
Thank you, Dr. Jagdish. This has been very helpful. I would like to thank all the presenters. You have taken almost all the questions. There are a few left, but we are running short of time. So we will look at a suitable platform to address those questions, and we will keep the communications continuing. Thank you very much for taking up all the questions. And now I'd like to hand over to Ruth and my colleague from Corbett Foundation, Mr. Kedar Gore, for their closing remarks. Thank you very much.
Okay, can you hear?
Yes, we can.
Yes,
Ruth.
okay, thank you. Thank you so much, Naveen, for moderating that excellent and inspiring session. So much work for all of us to do together. So we have come to the end of these 3 insightful and thought-provoking days. And I'd just like to close and reflect for a moment on how many bridges have been built. Bridges between researchers, NGOs, managers, others working in Central India. And we've heard so many great examples over the last few days. The foundation for all of these bridges rests on our holistic view of Central India as a whole landscape, as a landscape that encompasses globally important wildlife and biodiversity, changing livelihoods for tribal and other communities, the critical water tower function, which we were not able to address in these few days, and the rich cultures and history and so much more. And we've had so many great sharing of experiences over the last 3 days. I won't repeat them all, but this sharing of experiences has illustrated so many different kinds of bridges that we all are building together and that everyone here is a part of. The bridges between organizations, the bridges between scales, from the very local grassroots work that we've heard about to national missions and global scales, and most importantly, between the perspectives that we all bring to our work in Central India, whether it is conservation focused or human livelihood focused or development focused. And perhaps the most important bridges that we're building, as Claudio said, is the bridges between friends and between colleagues. And as Pinky said, this network for conserving Central India has grown organically because you all are so engaged and committed to the landscape, and everyone is welcome to continue to build this network and forge these bridges. So this virtual meeting has kept us connected and has brought in people from all over the world. But we all know that there is no substitute for discussing, debating, disagreeing in person. So I really look forward to the time when we can be together in the landscape, visit the forest together, share chai breaks, work together for our common goal for a vibrant and healthy Central Indian landscape. And I would just like to once again give an enormous thanks to all of the speakers, the panelists, the moderators. Fantastic job, everyone. And again to Kedar, Kishore, and Uma, who helped organize the program, to Sarika, Pooja, and Rupinder for managing the questions, and a very, very big thanks to Amrita and Mansi, who pulled it all together, so many details to make this event run smoothly. And a very big thanks to all of you for joining, participating, and for all of the work that everyone is doing to make Central India into a healthy, sustainable landscape. So it's great to see you all, and thanks for joining. And with that, I will ask Kedar to say a few words that will prime us for SILS 4.1 when we can hopefully be together in person. So Kedar.
Thank you, Ruth. I think my video is has been disabled. All right. Thank you. It was indeed a great session all the 3 days. I personally learned so many things. Day one was on the connectivity for tigers. Second day, we discussed how restoration efforts can be implemented in the landscape and how local community livelihood could be, weaved into that. Today was an exceptionally great session. Knowing about so many things, all the data that we have gathered over the years, and has been so well collated and presented now by all the speakers today. The collaborations that we have all forged in this in the last few years, and in consortiums like SLTP, NCCI itself, they have some very, very promising activities in the next few years. And one of the interesting activity that I would definitely want to highlight here is part B of this CILS 4. We all when we started discussing this, COVID had already set in, unfortunately, and we had to take a decision that one of the we had to split CILS 4 into two parts. And the first, of course, was the 3-day session which we held virtually. However, we all are very keen to organize and hold a part B of this session where we all can possibly meet sometime later this year in Kana. And we hope that this day will come soon. We are all waiting for things to normalize, when we all are able to travel safely from outside India, within India, and all of us reach Kana and spend 2-3 days together discussing more intensely what we have already discussed in the last 3 days, and possibly something more. And TCF, the Corbett Foundation, will be co-hosting this seminar in Kana. So I really look forward to welcoming all of you to Kana sometime in 2021. Uh, Meanwhile, till we meet next in Kana, I wish everybody uh, a good 2021, a healthy 2021, and continue your good work, the collaborations. And I thank once again the NCCI team for the enormous work that they have all done, the back end uh, support that they have extended. And special thanks to Ruth, Amrita, and Mansi for doing all the incredible hard work. I thank all the speakers, all the panelists, all the people who have joined this CILS 4 virtually, the government officials, everyone who has been a part of this. Thank you so much for making this a success. And I really look forward to welcoming all of you next time in Khana. Till then, goodbye and take care. Jai Hind.